Hello. Thank you for coming this evening. My name is Malan Breton. I wanted to say good evening and thank you to Vogue, Condé Nast and the Ministry of Culture for inviting me to Taipei Fashion Week to speak to all of you. Tonight I'm going to discuss a topic very dear to my heart, and that is Taiwan. In 2013, I had the honor and opportunity to partner with Taiwan Tourism Bureau at the Smithsonian Museum and Asian in New York to present a collection at Grand Central Station to 5,000 visitors. My journey with Taiwan, and I'm originally from Taiwan as well, is that I wanted to teach the world the beauty of this country, and the only way I knew to do that was through fashion. And so I created fashion shows and I created costumes for television and things that were inspired by elements that I knew growing up and that I knew from my family and from various friends. And the last show that I did in New York in last February was a show about Taiwanese superheroes, and I wanted to, in this world that we're in right now, there's been so much change, and I wanted to bring some hope and some joy to people. So I'll share with you a moment from that show, and then,
Now, shall we begin?
this was all footage that we shot in Taichung on the road. This collection was presented in New York City at Cipriani on 42nd Street to an audience of 2,800 people. Each piece is inspired by a shape or a silhouette of the city of Taichung. So tonight I would like to discuss Taiwan's influence on the international fashion industry and in the international marketplace as well. Just a bit about my brand. I started my brand in 2003. It was during New York Fashion Week, and I had been a performer for many, many years on Broadway and television, and I decided that I wanted to shift over to clothing because I'd always had an affection for fashion. So about 10 years after that, I partnered with Taiwan Tourism Bureau to present the show that you see the image of here, and it was called A Journey to Taiwan. It was a collection that we did that was inspired by 8 different elements of Taiwan, plus we made a film about this as well, which I'll show you more of later in the presentation. Originally, clothing originated in, it was about 40,000 years ago that they started making clothing. The people that created this clothing were the indigenous people of the world, and they created elements that were made from bone. They made needles from bones, used animal skins, created fibers from plants, vegetables, things like that, and dyes as well that they would create from the vegetables. So in order that they made these beautiful, unique outfits for their tribes or for their own people, they would incorporate different things in their environments. For example, like butterflies, rocks that they would find, stones, different things. This picture here is actually a show that we did in cooperation with Taiwan Tourism Bureau at the Grand Central Station. It was clothing that was inspired by the Hakka blue shirts, and we had the presentation was about 4 years ago. I would like to take you through some of the indigenous tribes and to look at some of their traditional costume. The Sadik tribe, the Rukai, the Amis tribe, which the Amis tribe is something that the Amis and the Tao tribe are very close to me because, well, you'll see later in the presentation, there's some information. Taiwan is known for 16 recognized tribes. These are a few of them here that I've got photographs of. And as you can see, there's such a rich history in Taiwan and a rich element of tradition through the indigenous people, through their fashion. This is a uniform that I designed for the East Coast National Scenic Area Administration Office using inspiration from the Amis tribe headdress. And what I did was we took that and then we made it into the shirt. And as you can see, these are some of the employees and the piece that we made for them as well. At the time that we went to visit the East Coast, there was a gentleman by the name of Truslin that was the director there, and he took us through Taitang. We went to Orchid Island, we went to Green Island, and I had an opportunity to spend some time in the Tao tribe's homes and to visit things that traditionally are not shown to the public, but because we had a connection at that time, they invited me in and then allowed me to be a part of their world. This was a fashion show that we did at New York Fashion Week in cooperation with Taiwan Tourism Bureau that we called Sangshantai, and it was for my Spring-Summer 2017 collection. This collection was shown at Hammerstein Ballroom in New York to 2,800 people, and it incorporates elements from each of the tribes that I showed you that are sort of, you'll see a presentation of it, but I just wanted to share this. We also incorporated dance, a mixture of dance from Tao tribe and Amis tribe into the show. And this is, do you know Ariana Grande? That's her brother. We had many famous actors in this show as well. This is Titus Burgess. He's on a famous television show in America called The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. This is an actress named Nini Leaks. That shows up in my name. The collection you've seen was inspired by these elements. We incorporated the haka flower and the indigenous costume of the Tao tribe into these pieces here. We hand beaded the haka flowers into the garments themselves. We did also the Magellan butterfly, which is indigenous to that orchid island, Lanyu, and we printed the butterfly onto the garments itself. The arches of Saint-Chantai Bridge and the crystal blue of the ocean in Orchid Island, the colors and the silhouette of the Reku tribe inspired these pieces here as well. And this is a very famous actress in America named Angel Pai. She's originally from Taiwan as well. One evening we went with the director of tourism on a walk through the forest on Orchid Island, and we saw owls and the butterflies and various moths and things. So what I did was I painted the elements into fabric, and then we created fashion through that. The rock formations of Orchid Island and the Paiwan tribe were inspiration for this beaded costume. The Paiwan tribe has very intricately beaded costumes for them, for the ceremonies and things. And these pieces were inspired by the magpie, the plum blossom, the magnolia, and the Cherokee rose, which are all symbolic of Taiwan. Through my fashion, I have also been asked to design costumes for a number of television shows. which I've had the opportunity of working with MTV, NBC, Minute to Win It, ABC, pretty much all the different networks in the States and in Europe. This is actually Priyanka Chopra wearing one of the pieces that was inspired by the Recruit Tribe in the commercial for Quantico.
Quantico moves to Fridays, starting next Friday, 8/7 Central on ABC.
But as you can see here, Frankie Grande, who is the brother of Ariana Grande, is wearing a suit made with the Hakka fabric. And then we had the costumes for Minute to Win It were actually inspired by the city lights of Taipei. And because of the colors and because of the silhouette of them, we were able to actually take that and use it in the staging of the show. So the entire show was actually inspired by the city of Taipei. I wanted to talk a little bit about tradition and branding. In fashion, it's very important for us, for marketing purposes, to have a very strong sense of our branding and marketing. And as I've traveled all over the world, the first time that I've actually seen branding in an indigenous format was when we were at Lanniu and looking at the boats that they had and all the totems and things that used the pattern that was, it's literally how they live. Their life is intertwined in these, in this sort of marketing sentiment that they have. In 2015, I was inspired by a trip to Taiwan to learn about the Hakka blue shirts. The shirts that I learned were made of ecologically friendly fibers, ecologically friendly dyes, and all constructed by ecologically friendly means. And so I wanted to create a collection that was also ecologically friendly and dyed and constructed in the same fashion. So we created this collection here, which was part of my Spring-Summer 2016 collection. It's a men's collection that was all inspired by Hakkanese blue shirts, and we had live opera singer to sing. We also incorporated the Menong paper umbrellas as well in this fashion show. And all of these pieces were batiked and printed by hand, and they were all done with dyes that were friendly to the earth, with vegetable dyes and with various plant dyes as well. Also, when we presented this part of the collection, the shoes were all made by hand, dyed by drum-dyed, and using vegetable dyes, and everything was done ecologically, so that it was friendly to the earth, in honor of the Hakka blue shirt. The suiting that was done in the amber color was actually made from pineapple fibers that we were able to weave, and each of these pieces were woven individually. We never sold these pieces because they would cost about $100,000 for just one jacket, so it was... So I've come to the part of the talk that is one of my favorite. I'm enamored by flowers, and I'm actually named after Malan Breton. So for me, this section is very important, but haka flowers to me have always been a very important part of my life, I would say. I incorporated the haka flowers into my Spring-Summer 2015 collection, the fabrics, that we did in cooperation with Taiwan Tourism Bureau. This was a show that was done called A Journey to Taiwan, and this show was inspired by so many various elements of Taiwan. I'll give you a moment to have a look at it, and then I'll explain to you each of the separate sections of this show. I'm just going to briefly go through each section, but this opening section was inspired by the ceiling boards of the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial, and you'll see the next model that walks out, we actually carved in jade the same symbols that are in the wood boards above. This section was inspired by the Hakka blue shirts. And we also incorporated the Hakka fabric into this section here. I'll just fast forward to the end of the show. These gowns were inspired by the Lanyu birds of the Tao tribe, and these gowns were never. We produced them strictly for the show, but they were never actually sold in agreement with the tribe themselves. For this show, we had 88 models and 88 separate looks on each model, and each of the looks was inspired by various elements, which I'll show you now. We used the blossoms from the Formosa Aboriginal cultural village as inspiration for this section of that show. Sinche Lavender Cottage was inspiration for this part of the collection, and we created couture gowns and specially wove some fabrics for this as well. This vase in the Qing, which is part of the Qing Dynasty collection in the National Palace Museum, was what inspired this suit here. At Green Island, we did a complete section that was inspired by the natural elements of Green Island. And again, the Orchid Island gowns. The Hakka blue shirts, which inspired this section, and then the lanterns at Wenwu Temple that inspired the yellows. The collection itself was celebrated by the media and was one of the most trend-forecasted collections that year, including copies. I wouldn't say so much copies, but they were inspirations to many designers around the world, including, actually I can't name them because but they were in the trend forecast books for that season. The first 5 pages were the collection that was inspired by Taiwan, and that was for WGSN, for quite a few of the different companies. So after the fashion show, we came back to Taiwan with a film crew to film some footage for the movie A Journey to Taiwan. It showed the inspiration of each of the sections of the fashion show, and I'm not going to show you the entire film. I have the trailer here. The film won the New York International Film Festival Short Film Prize for Best Direction, and it was my first time directing a movie, so it was very fun. And then after that, it was in contingency for the Academy Award in America, and we presented the film in Hollywood, in Taiwan. We also presented it in like Dallas and many places through the US. This is the trailer here though. Taiwan is my passion, my love, my inspiration. I am grounded here. Returning to my roots, I am at peace, calm and serene, seeking out and experiencing fresh new things for my collections. Living my dream life away from the craziness, overstimulation of New York City. So much atmosphere, ambience, culture, people, food, shopping, all of the different sounds, sights, smells, lush natural beauty, bountiful gardens, calmness of the sea, colors of the water, everything wonderful and beautiful. I have always designed my collections with Taiwan in mind, but my Spring-Summer 2015 collection, A Journey to Taiwan, is really such a deep and complete love story to this beautiful, sensitive, honest land, the place of my birth. It's kind of it's kind of crazy coming back here. I always, coming back to Taiwan, find very, my heart is always warm. This country has been inspiration to so much of my work, and my grandmother, who is from Taiwan, she gave me so much to share with the world, and that's why I've tried with my collections and with my voice in entertainment to give Taiwan a voice in other places that people don't quite know of. Oftentimes people say to me, oh, when I say, oh, I'm originally from Taiwan, they say, oh, I love Thai food. And it's to me, it's kind of shocking to still hear that in 2018. But, and then I'll invite them to my fashion shows, or I'll invite them to something that I'm doing, and then they'll book tickets to come to Taiwan, and they'll find themselves completely engulfed in the kindness of the people and the beauty of the country and the beauty of everything in Taiwan. I just the film won the Taiwan Tourism Award in 2015 and in 2016, and for that ceremony I was at the time was when Ma was president, and so I was seated right next to Ma, and so it was a very honor for me. To go on, fashion has clearly been a staple of the culture in Taiwan for many, many years, as you've seen through the indigenous art, and as you see in the same room of people. The next generation of fashionista has many opportunities globally to affect the culture of Taiwan through cultural exchange programs. There's a university in New York called LIM, which I mentor for very often. I've mentored about 400 students from that university over the years, and they have an exchange program with Xichen University. Plus, the Fujian Catholic University has a wonderful program for fashion and textiles. I had an opportunity to give a lecture at Xichen University 2 years ago, and it was very fascinating to me to see everyone's individual style, because I think that so many trends in the West come from the East, and I think that there are things here that people are wearing or people are designing that will become inspiration for things happening in the States or in Europe in the future. And that's why I say so much about Taiwan being an inspiration to the world for fashion. If you look in the room, there's so much like diversity in the fashion of what everyone's wearing. You've got the more traditional, the classic, then you've got the more trend-oriented bits. And my hope is that through mentoring and through bringing people on, I had 2 students in London last season who mentored with me, and they were both from Taiwan, and they I hope to see people continue in their dreams and to change the industry with the beauty of this country and the voice of this country and the voice of what inspires so much in Taiwan. There are a million other designers in the world that create fashion that is already done, and it's things that are copies or things that are recreated or like reinvented. So I always say to young designers, find your voice, find who you are as a designer, and try to build from that. And don't forget your past. Always bring your past with you, because your past will be the thing that makes a difference in your career and in your life. I wanted to talk a little bit about how Taiwan has affected celebrity fashion in the West. Myself, I've dressed about 400 celebrities over the last 5 years. Everyone from Ariana Grande. This is actually Alexander Wang, Ariana wearing Alexander. I wanted to incorporate some of the other Taiwanese designers as well. And Michelle Obama wearing Jason Wu, and then there's Priyanka wearing me, and some of the other actresses. People are looking for this voice, and I think that in fashion there are already so many European designers doing the same thing and cutting the box cut, and it's beautiful, it's a lovely thing, But I think coming from Taiwan, you look at things very differently. You look at things with an eye for flow. And I think people really like that in the West. So I try to incorporate those elements, and I hope that if any of you are designers or artists or graphic people, that you'll do the same. I wanted to chat a bit about the press and the media of Taiwanese designers. In 2004, Taipei News printed a report saying that Taiwan had yet to leave its mark on fashion. In 2005, CNN did a report on my Journey to Taiwan show saying that my brand could be the answer to Taiwan, Taiwan's answer to luxury fashion. I think that myself, Alexander Wang, Shati Chen, Nodaka, all the designers that have found success around the world, I think we're trying to build and slowly give opportunities for other designers, and coming from Taiwan as well. But again, like I said before, it's so important. Like, I have my look, and Jason has his look, and Alexander has his look, and we all design what is here. And sometimes when I see fashion shows in other countries, like I went to Austria as a guest of the government there to present Fashion Week, and some of the collections looked exactly like other collections that were already being made, and I thought to myself, well, if you want to be a contender in the global market, you have to have a voice of your own. And I think sometimes when I was invited to Shenzhen by the director of fashion in Shenzhen as well, to close Shenzhen Fashion Week a few years ago, and I noticed the fashion there was very either formal gowns or some looks that looked very similar to other European designers. I didn't see a lot of individuality though, and I think for me individuality is so important, and I think that editors of magazines as well often look for that. If you can, even in your own style, if you're a blogger, if you're an Instagram celebrity, or if you're an influencer, things like that, people want something different. They don't want to go to your Instagram and see the same thing that another person's already doing. Like, they want you to be that unique individual, because people love uniqueness. They love the light that shines inside of everyone, rather than the same. Not everyone's going to be Kim Kardashian, and not everyone's going to be like, you know, Diet Prada and things like that, which they're fantastic at what they do, but then there's an important opportunity for other people to be a voice themselves. In this day and age, with the importance of the earth and the issues that we're having with the ecosystem, I wanted to place some emphasis on how Taiwan has changed the way that fashion is looked at in the eco realm. Ecological fashion has been a very important element of Taiwan for many, many years. There have been fibers created from recycled bottles in Taiwan, I would say probably for the last 15 to 16 years. And they've been able to use those fibers in sweaters. They have a cashmere actually that they make from it, that's recycled bottle cashmere, that's incredible. And they do poly jackets and various other pieces. The thing with me is I incorporate some of this into my collections, because there is a factory in Taiwan that makes paillettes from recycled bottles also. And so we create some of the couture pieces that are made with sequins or paillettes by hand with these recycled paillettes that are made from bottles. I find that not enough designers are placing emphasis on the importance of reusing things that are in the environment that can create this beauty that of what we're doing in our business. I wanted to also talk about how Taiwan has affected the global market. And I know I spoke about it a bit before, but one of the most important brands to come up in the world over the last probably 35 years has been Nautica. It's been a contender with Ralph Lauren Polo, been a contender with all of the very accessible sportswear lines. It's one of the most profitable businesses to come from a designer out of Taiwan, and it's something that I think the world needs more of now, because so many of us do like the expensive ready-to-wear at a certain price point, but I think if any of you are students or if any of you are in the business mind of opening your own business, it may be good for you to look at that sort of price point and that sort of branding for yourself to go into and to kind of build a global market. The thing that's really important as well, I've been watching some of the fashion shows in Taiwan over the last couple of days, and I watch the shows all over the world because we're invited, my team and I are invited to the shows in Paris, we go to Chanel, we go to all those shows. We always look for the quality and the way things are made and how even little details of stitching and things like that, how important those elements are, because when you buy a garment, you want it to last. And especially if you're spending like 15,000, and I'm trying to convert NTD, if it's 30,000 NTD, which is like 1,000, if you're spending about 30,000 NTD on a shirt, you want it to last and you want it to be made well and you don't want the seams to pull and you... So look at your clothes, really look at them, turn them inside out, see how they're made, look at the fabrics, learn a little bit about fabric, because the way silk feels and the way polyester feels is totally different up against the skin. And there's, if you're in the realm of fashion and if you're in the mindset of launching your own brand, look at natural fibers as much as possible, or recycled fibers as much as you possibly can, and also look at the way things are dyed and make sure that you're using dyes and processes that are friendly to the earth. The thing that I love about Taiwan is you have one of the biggest shopping centers in the world that is run on natural energy, and to be the first shopping center anywhere to have this is a landmark for Taiwan. It's something to be so proud of, because other shopping centers are not as sustainable. And in America right now, because of the way the economy is, many shopping centers are closing because the high costs of energy and the high costs of rentals and things like that. But a lot of that comes from the fact that the power that they use, like we had in my store in the East Village, the energy costs for that shop were about $30,000 a month to run, American dollars a month, to just run the electricity, because we'd run the front of store lights in the evenings while it was shut, and then we had the security system going, you know, all the time. But then in the daytime we've got numerous lights and things going on. It's amazing what Taiwan has done and how Taiwan has kind of changed the world in that sense of retail and the way that things are presented. And I am so grateful to be from here. I wanted to talk a little bit about Xiaozi Chen. Xiaozi Chen is the only member of Chambre Syndicale at this time, which Chambre Syndicale is the organization that I want to. Okay, Xiaozi Chen is the only designer at this time that's actually a member of Chambre Syndicale for Prêt-à-Porter and Couture in both divisions of Couture and Prêt-à-Porter, which is such a huge honor to have a designer from Taiwan that is in that league of designer. There will soon be another designer in that league as well, but I can't say anything at this time. But another designer from Taiwan as well. But Xiaozi Chen is the most beautiful collection of pieces that they're so inspiring. I even go into their shops in Paris, and it's just so beautiful. So I'd say try to support Taiwanese fashion as much as you can, especially design houses like Xiaozi Chen, who are changing the world with their voice, and it's a very strong voice of Taiwan. So the future of fashion in Taiwan is this. It's everyone in this room. It's everyone that buys clothing, wears clothing, thinks of clothing. It's I think that the most important thing to learn is something I learned this Fashion Week in London. The editors at British Vogue were literally looking for the shows of designers that were from Taiwan, because they were so drawn to the work of Apujan and my work and things like that at Fashion Week, that they were literally looking for the new up-and-coming designers. And there's an organization called Fashion Scout in London that shows a lot of young, emerging designers from Taiwan, and they were there to embrace all the collections, which was it's a very good time in the world for Taiwanese design, and so be true to your heart. I personally spend a lot of time, like I said before, mentoring students from all over the world. We've mentored students from Spain, Taiwan, from Sweden, Norway, the UK, all over. Because that is what fashion will be. And the industry is changing so much now that it's not the old-fashioned way of selling clothes where you go into a store and you have a salesperson and they just present you everything. I don't think in Asia it was ever really that way, because we had the internet and we had, internet shopping and things. But I think more in the West, shopping has changed completely. People don't want to go into a store, they don't want to feel the clothes. They just, oh, hello. This is Jade Chu. She's a very famous jewelry designer in New York as well. And she's one of my friends. We've partnered together on many shows over the years in New York and in London both. But yeah, I wanted to just say this. It's a very unique time right now for design and architecture and art and people that are coming out of Taiwan, and embrace it and give yourself the opportunity to travel the world and share your art or your voice with the world. And thank you. Before I go, I would like to leave you with my Spring-Summer 2019 collection that was shown at London Fashion Week, and a question and answer session as well. Has anyone any questions? Yes.
Hi, Ms. Breton.
Yes.
My name is John. I'm an MBA student from National University. I greatly appreciate your abundant and passionate speech tonight. Two questions for you. The first one is, for different customer base, how do you apply Taiwan elements for different customer segmentation in different fashion show globally? The second question is that if you apply your individuality, creativity, how will you to blend the Taiwan elements? Do we prefer the localized or more internationalized in US or European fashion show? Yeah, thank you.
So for the first question, I wanted to tell you, when you're creating your collection, you're clearly creating it with your voice. So any elements that are a part of your collection will be elements that will be embraced by the general public if they enjoy your collection, if they like your collection. I don't really do adaptations of my fashion for anyone. I do a lot of custom pieces because we have a very, very big custom clientele. But each market, like I would say for each of the marketplaces that we're in, actually, it's fairly consistent with the collection. The only difference that we have is in Asia, the sizing is smaller, that we do for everything. And then in the West, we always size up. And in the US, everything is sized a bit more than that as well, actually. But other than that, the elements that are in the collection themselves stay consistent. And for the globalization of fashion and the globalization of a brand, we're in a very, very special time right now because of Instagram, because of social media, where you actually don't even have to step out of your country to gain a following of fans. And if you create beautiful fashion or create beautiful art and you post it on your social media, people are so drawn to that, and they see it in their feed, and then they're drawn to it, and then they'll contact you. Like we have contacted different businesses all over the world that create different things for us that we've actually met through Instagram. It's localization compared to globalization. I think in this day and age, we really don't live in a time where it's so much about localization, because anything we put out there on the internet, online, on WeChat, is there for the world to see. You know, everyone uses social media now, so it's very different now. Anyone else?
Thank you for beautiful sharing. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
Just want to know, in addition to the style and uniqueness of being a designer, so what are the challenges and weaknesses, okay, for Taiwan young designers if they want to develop an international market?
Okay, I think the challenges and weaknesses for young designers are going to be in the financial realm. And I think that it's important that we, the more developed designers, actually build foundations to help the younger new designers coming up. So actually this year in 2019, I'll be starting an organization that will help to develop funding for new young designers coming out of Taiwan. And I'll also be, my brand is very diverse. I have a film company, I have a fashion company, I have a television company. We produce Broadway, we produce shows all over the world. What I'm planning to do, though, in 2019 and 2020 is to launch a media platform that offers a kind of crossover of Taiwan and the West, so that new young designers coming out of Taiwan will have the voice that I did. Because many years ago, when I first started design, I was on a television program in the States called Project Runway, and I was only on 2 episodes, but those 2 episodes of that show were worth millions millions and millions and millions of dollars in public relations money, and it brought me so much business just from having that voice. And I think there's an opportunity with, like I said, Instagram and social media to expand without a lot of money, because most designers are generally starting out of, unless they have very well-to-do families, they're generally starting off with nothing. And so I myself, I'm trying to build programs to help new businesses grow, because my grandmother always told me to give back, and so this is my way of doing that. So I think it's important that we, the more known, give back to the new generation and not look at it as a competition, because it really isn't. There's enough in the world for everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
When you're promoting your collection with some Taiwanese elements,
yes,
I think it's very important, like as you mentioned, the branding and also the marketing side of the business. It's important for people to get the emotions of what Taiwanese element is. So could you explain what Taiwanese elements? I'm from Hong Kong, and for Hakka flower or for the tribe traditions and culture from Taiwan, it's also quite difficult for me to understand it. But I can imagine for audience in Europe and also in the States, that would be even more difficult for them to find a connection. And how do you achieve that?
I grew up in film and television, and so when you come to my fashion shows, you'll see a movie. I write, when I design a collection, I write a script, and then I create clothes for each character in the script. So each of those characters has a heart and has emotion, and takes you through a story of ups and downs in a journey. And so in that process of giving people a story, I also incorporate indigenous elements. I incorporate stories of tradition, stories of myth. I also incorporate live music. I incorporate live dance. Because the minute you walk into my show, it's an escape from reality. Well, certain reality, I would say. But it's more like you're sort of jumping into a different world. And so you're actually living this experience. And we had one show at Madison Square Garden 2 years ago for my Fall-Winter 2017 collection that we had. I created a film that was based off of the evolution of the world, and everyone left that theater that day crying. And I've never experienced that in my life, but I think because of the way things are changing globally with humanity, people could completely relate to the story that I was telling and the music. I have many friends that are musicians and many friends that are visual artists and things. I try to bring everyone together to tell this story like a movie, because I think that's the only real way to give understanding of what you're trying to present. I hope I answered that. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Thanks for your lovely speech. And
thank you for coming.
Yes, we believe all the people here learn a lot from you.
Thank you.
And as you are running your own business, I believe that you are very talented in design. But as we all know, you can not only do your brand, your business by only design technique, and you need some financial skills or some business help.
Yes.
Do you think it's important for the young designers in Taiwan to learn not only the business, not only the design part, but also the business side of knowledge?
Yeah.
We need your honest opinion.
Okay, I'll be very honest about this. When I went into fashion as a designer, I mentored under the Royal Warrant in the UK with Turnbull and Asser, and then I also mentored under Arnold Skazi. Both of those houses required me to spend at least 10 hours a week on the business side of fashion, dealing with the numbers, dealing with what was coming in, what was going out, the prices of fabrics, the construction of fabrics, things like that. I think it's the most important thing to have a business background before you have a fashion design background, because if you can't sell your clothes, then you might as well just, be making pieces for a museum. So I think that the most important, and then I also worked with various retailers. I worked with Banana Republic, I worked with some very major Barney's retailers that they also, outside of dealing with a celebrity clientele, they also taught me a business element of fashion. And so I think it's very important. I think that also you have to make friends that are in the finance sector, because without the financial sector, you won't have a business in the beginning, unless your family, like my family was not there to, they said, you're doing this, you're on your own, you're not going to become a doctor, you're not going to become a lawyer, you have to find your way. And I did, but the thing is, I also have friends in the financial sector, and I also have friends in Hollywood, and so those people, like my first 4 dresses were on famous Hollywood actresses because I had them, they were my friends from working on Broadway. And the financial element of it was I had very close friends that were in the business sector, and they helped me with the finance and helped me build that side of my business as well. Yeah. And I always recommend that the students in the States or anywhere take at least 2 years of business courses to go along with their degree of fashion, because, like I said, you can make all the beautiful clothes in the world, but you can't live just off making clothes.